Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you
I am
doing?
doing really well. It's
Well,
so good to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. We got to interview one of your colleagues for Blue, and
Yeah.
so I'm glad that you're here now. But before we get into everything, I mean, you got to tell us your story, the start of you utilizing your voice in the world of opera.
Oh, it's a long story. I'll give you a short version. I was a quiet kid. I was a shy kid, and I had amazing teachers in school. In elementary school, I met my first love, music, through my elementary school music teacher. Her name was Carolyn Glover. I talk about her all the time because at that point, talk about history and lineage and continuation. Like, she was changing my life and I didn't even know it. She loved music so much and she infused that passion in me that it became my passion. So every opportunity I got to sing, and I thought about her and that love she had for music, and I just continued, and my path grew from that. I went to Performing Arts High School in Washington D.C., Duke Ellington School of the Performing Arts, and from there I got scholarships to go to University of Ohio, and then University of Michigan, then Academy of Vocal Arts. An opportunity kept coming to do music because of this love and passion I had for it, and it's just grown and gotten bigger over my life.
Yeah, it's so amazing to hear when stories have so much longevity like that because you never know where a passion may take
Yeah,
you when you're a young person.
yeah, yeah.
And it's a great reminder, I think, for a lot of young people who find themselves kind of dibbling and dabbling and stuff. But it's like I tell my sons now, when you find the thing that really is like moving you, it's amazing because you
Yeah.
stick with it and you'll see some real results from
Yeah.
it. So as you kind of come out of school and doing it in, academically, how was it for you to make that trek to the professional world?
That's often a difficult path for singers because you go from this protected environment of the university and people telling you what to do and what to sing to all of a sudden having to make choices for yourself. What do I want to sing? What companies do I want to work for? And then you have, operas. It's an expensive art form. You have to find your way how to navigate to opportunity. And I think a lot of singers have difficulty finding opportunity in an art form that, it's kind of a niche market for some people. So I was able again to find great mentors. I was able to, I often tell singers to find their community. I was able to find people who believed in me and who appreciate what I had to offer the art form, and just kind of grew.
Wow. I mean, that says something too, though, about your skill and talent and clearly your dedication to it because,
Absolutely.
it's not just all like, oh, it's just natural. No, you have to hone in
Oh yeah.
on that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
opera is not like singing like in a normal choir or something like that. It's very specific.
It's very
Tell
specific.
us about some of that specificity in terms of like, hey, I love music. And now it's like, oh, I'm a full fledged opera singer.
Yeah, opera, it takes a lot of skill. Like, so I started singing with natural talent. And that'll take you to an extent. It'll take you so far. But once you get into the nuance of the languages, singing in 5 different languages, having to memorize a whole entire opera score, having to work with people who don't speak your language, having to travel the world and interact with cultures that you may not have ever had any connection to. And there's a whole set of skills that go along with being an opera singer outside of singing that makes one successful or not.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I mean, I've talked to other opera singers, particularly about that language piece and just how
Absolutely.
important and integral that is in the
Yeah.
art form of opera. But of course, I mean, I got to get to it because I saw you in Blue, and
Yeah.
Blue for me is the first opera. I'm so grateful to Josh because Josh, like, no, I'm telling you, you got to come and see this. And I was like, well, okay, I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
anything
yeah.
about opera, but let me interview one of the guys gonna be on the, cast and let me come. And then I stayed for the Q&A after. I was so intrigued by the entire process because in my mind, I thought, wow, you mean to tell me that there's a way to infuse Black folks' lived experience
Mm.
in the world of opera,
Mm-hmm.
in this art form? And
Mm-hmm.
I really had never contemplated that before, but you did such a phenomenal job. And there
Thank
was
you.
so much emotion in your role and in that entire show. Tell us about that experience for you.
Blue for me was a game changer. I often say there's me pre-Blue and post-Blue. Um, Before I encountered Blue, I often felt like a guest in this world of opera. I having to imagine myself being a king or the devil or a god. Those things are so foreign to me. So I was acting those parts. I was playing those parts. And often, being a black man singing and, singing, being King Philip singing as a black man, it's just, there's a disconnect there. But when I saw the libretto and heard the score for Blue for the first time for me, it was like, oh, that's me. That's my father. That's my auntie. That's my mother. Like I know these people. I like a deep know these people. So for me, it was the first time I got to be on stage and just be myself, and be a black man. And as all operas, there is that love and tragedy that happens in the stories. And Blue was written about police violence. It was written about, the loss of a black life, which is a lot of what we were dealing with in society at the time that it was written. So there was a lot of raw emotions when I first started doing Blue. And I went in, I think it was the first time I could go into rehearsal and just be angry. I was angry in those first rehearsals, but it was so cathartic to sing that score that we literally sat on the floor as a cast and cried sometimes because it was so much of a release. And as an artist, do art because it touches something in you. Blue for me was the first time I could find myself in opera. It changed me. It changed how I perform. It changed how I approach every other opera after that.
That just gave me goosies, man. I mean, the idea that what you were experiencing and what the cast was experiencing internally was definitely felt, particularly I think by Black audience
Oh,
members
absolutely.
in the like there was a real. I mean, I was sitting next to, and I probably told this story before, y'all, so forgive me, but I was sitting next to an older white woman, and she was just bawling, right? And I was like, I can't really bawl because like this is like so real for me. Plus, with my activism hat on, I'm out here in the community. I'm leading protests, thousands of people behind me. I am experiencing a part of my life here. And so I just wanted to be so in tune to every moment of it that I didn't allow myself to get wrapped up in the emotion of it. And it was interesting because after some of the questions that were asked, it was clear there was such a huge disconnect for so many that were in the audience because like they've never been even exposed to this story because maybe they turn the channel when those news stories come up, or maybe they're not really, they don't have to absorb it, right? And whereas for me, I'm like, I don't have a choice. I got 2 sons. You know what I mean, who are going to be Black men in this world. I don't have a choice. And so that part for me was so visceral and was so real. And I just have to thank you for it because y'all put everything on that stage. You gave it all. And it was something that was completely felt. I took my best friend with me. She was like, oh my gosh, what is this? I'm like, I know, right? What is this? And is this opera? So as you continue, clearly that has a big, leaves a big part for you, something that you carry forward into other roles. How would you say it really kind of changed you now as you look at the next role? I mean, now Das Rheingold, how do you then embody what you experienced there in the role you're playing?
Of course. So, Blue was so close. The first couple of roles I did after Blue that, were just foreign to me, like other operas, it felt empty, like it felt fake, So now I look for my way in through my Black lens, if that makes any sense. There's a cultural understanding of situation, and you realize every opera deals with the humanity of a person, or the humanity of a people. And before Blue, I never attached my own humanity to characters. I always thought, what would it be like to be in this time frame? Not necessarily thinking about what it would be like to be Kenneth in this time frame, what it would be like to have my life experience in this time frame. I thought, okay, a man in this time frame would do this, and I would put on that character. I would act. So now when I look at characters, I think of, what would Kenneth's life with his life experience be like in this time frame? So doing Das Rheingold, no, I've taken to social media, my social media, and I try to explain characters with a modern sentiment. So I always think about, what would Fafner listen to? What would his playlist be? And Fafner he's the Malcolm X of Das Rheingold.
Wow.
He is that character who, like, I wrote on Facebook, it's like Fafner's not for the shits. Like,
Hmm.
he wants what he wants. He did his job. Give him his money. Like, he doesn't want to hear anything else. So when I'm thinking about that playlist and thinking about modern characters that I could attach to, so in Das Rheingold, they're two brothers. One is a lover, and one is like Tupac. So I was thinking about Outcasts, and I was thinking about Andre and Big Boy. And they are a perfect analogy to Fafner and Fazol and Rheingold. And so this playlist, I had, Big Spitter, Give Me My, like,
Yeah.
Rihanna, of
Yeah.
course. And then, Lil Wayne's Duffel Bag Boy. That is Fafner. so so going from Blue, like, I attach, how my life experience would live through these characters, and I find the experience much more richer. And my community, people I talk to about opera in that way, they understand it so much better.
Wow. That's really deep. I've actually never heard anyone share that that's how you can get into character, but I am with it.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, I'm completely with it because it makes so much sense to me and makes it more real, obviously, for you,
Yeah.
right? But for me, again, I can't wait to see this. I'll be there on the 20th and I get to see it in action because I'm like, as you're explaining that, I know I'm going to feel that as an audience
Yeah.
member. And that for me is one of the things that I have really began to understand and identify with my love for opera. And I've talked to Josh about this, but the idea that the stories take on so many different life forms
Yeah.
and the music is the guiding light, but then there's so much more in terms of the costumes and the set.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
how is that for Das Rheingold? I mean, are we getting into some stuff? Y'all got
No,
some
it's the
what we
costumes
looking at?
are absolutely beautiful. And the makeup is, like, it's beautiful. It's one of those beautiful productions I've ever been a part of. The
Wow.
director and the designer are very creative in their producing this piece. Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of set in the future, with this very earthy feel to it. It keeps you connected to the humanity of these characters. And I always say, I mean, I think that's the beauty of opera. The goal of an artist is to express something through whatever medium it is. We were telling your story about Kemet earlier and seeing the stone books. It hit me very recently that, you know artists are the vehicle for culture. They're the vehicle for history. There's a lot of things that, those people, from Kemet don't exist anymore. They can't tell their stories, but the art that they left behind, so much can be gleaned from that. So to be an artist and to tell our story and leave that history for people, it's empowering to me as an artist. I love being a part of the art community for that reason.
Yeah, I'm right there with you in that regard. When I think about media, for me, I'm always using the term impact media because if I'm not making an impact with my show here, the ways that I'm able to really just sit here, have an amazing conversation with you, and share your life experience for the audience, like what am I doing? If I don't
Yeah.
have the platform that is uplifting stories that otherwise wouldn't be told, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So there's always something for me that's that driving force. And I'm so glad that you had time in your busy schedule to be with me
Oh, it's my
today. Like,
pleasure.
this
My
is
pleasure.
just phenomenal. Of course, as you think about the one thing you want the audience to walk away from as they come and see Das Rheingold, let them know right there. I mean, what is that
Yeah.
one thing you want them to really walk away with?
I think Das Rheingold and Wagner in particular. I mean, opera. We'll just talk about opera in particular. Opera can often be intimidating because we feel like it's not a part of us. We feel like it's not telling our stories. But every story is told in opera. Opera is about the humanity of people. And being part of that human experience, your story can be found in opera.
Wow. Oh, well, I'll say I agree because I've been able to see plenty of them at this
Yeah,
point, and I'm constantly, hit with the story, and it's like, oh, that's touching because it's somehow connecting to my own lived experience. Kenneth Kellogg,
my
thank you
pleasure.
so
My
much.
pleasure.
This has
Thank
been
you.
phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Y'all